Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Emily LeFevers, and I work with the Miami University Alumni Association. Tonight, we are so excited to have with us Bethany Perkins, the Director of Admissions at Miami, and Andrew Boehm, Associate Director for Visits and Events at Miami. Bethany and Andrew will discuss the Miami admissions process and share an enrollment update. Just a reminder that there is an Ask a Question box located on the bottom of the screen. I'll be monitoring these questions throughout, so feel free to ask any questions you may have, and I will relay them to Bethany and Andrew at the Q&A portion at the end of the evening. So without further ado, go ahead and take it away, Andrew and Bethany.
Thank you so much, Emily. Once again, my name is Bethany Perkins. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you tonight. And we will get right into it, but not before my colleague Andrew is able to introduce himself.
Thanks, Bethany. So I'm Andrew Boehm. I've been with Miami Admission for about 8 years, doing primarily visits and events. So I'm really happy to be bringing this to you tonight and give you a little bit more of a look behind the scenes.
Yeah, you're going to get the pleasure of hearing from Andrew, very similar to what our students and families hear when they're coming to campus, which we are hosting. We are on campus hosting visitors right now and asking questions about the process. So again, we'll get right into it and start off with an enrollment update. Fall 2020, of course, a pandemic hit in the middle of our recruitment cycle. So following a record year of over 4,300 enrollments, this past fall 2020, we had 3,847 first-year undergraduates join us. So the class looked a lot like the classes the past few years prior to fall 2020 or 2019, when we had a very large class. But even then, they had a very, very strong class of students coming in. So similar to what you have seen in previous years, the average GPA of our students coming in was a 3.76. And the middle 50% had a 25 to 31 on the ACT, very close to that 27 to 28 average. And we had students representing, I hate saying this, Andrew, it's 49 states. It was 50, I swear, going right into the start of the term. And 68 countries were still represented in our class this past fall, and 15.2% of them were students of color. The very interesting thing, too, about this incoming class, and particularly the students who are represented in our international student body, is we provided study away options for students. So our students in China, Vietnam, South Korea could actually choose to still study as a Miami student, but within their own country. So we were able to come up with some quick solutions for them when they weren't able to make it to our country at this time. And then, of course, we went into fall 2021 recruitment and a very different application process. So we discovered in the middle of last year's cycle that students were not going to get in to take the test for what? We thought maybe a few months, right, Andrew?
Right.
We are still here and finding that students are really, really challenged to get into SAT and ACT tests safely. So we were among hundreds of colleges and universities that decided to go test optional for at least the fall 2021 cycle. And I'd love to talk a little bit about what we signed on to with other admission deans in this unique year. And it won't be any surprise to you, we learned that our students and families could not hear enough that they need to take care of themselves. It's okay to be managing as much as we are right now. It's okay to be stressed out. And it is our job to help relieve that as much as possible. So along with other admission deans, I signed on to a collective statement that says, this is what matters right now. And we said, number one, you need to take care of yourself. And that's going to look different for every student. And we're going to give a lot of flexibility to you right now. You're not going to be disadvantaged for decisions that were outside of your control. And we also know that you're not going to be at a school that's going to even get through all of its curriculum this year. We have students who are going to need more help in this incoming fall class than ever. And we just let students and families know we are aware of that. We know you're struggling. We're all struggling to take care of yourselves. Secondly, there are a lot of students that are not writing essays about the support and strength that people in their life have given to them, but they're writing essays and statements about how they're part of their family's support system all of a sudden. We have applicants who are homeschool teachers and helping their younger siblings get through a remote year. And we wanted to recognize that that's an important thing to note in an application, that it's not just about the typical extracurricular activities. It's not the summer camps that a lot of students didn't get to go to this past year. It's something to write down. It is meaningful if you are helping get food on the table, or if you had to pick up a part-time job, or if you're helping take care of siblings because your parents no longer have childcare. Those are the kinds of things that we're seeing on applications this year that we think add a lot of value. And that brings me to the next piece, extracurriculars and summer activities. Many of them were canceled or changed drastically, and we wanted students and families to know that we get that, and you're not going to be disadvantaged because of things you didn't get to participate in. And the last two pieces, academic work will be taken into account in context. So yes, grades still matter, and the rigor of students' curriculum still matters, but there are students who attended schools that went pass-fail or not. That wasn't their decision. That wasn't their call. So we're looking at them and their applications in the context of what is happening around our students and families and the decisions that they don't necessarily get to control. And of course, service and contribution to others. This is not the part where I say we're going to check off all of the things and how many masks a student made in the past year. It was our chance to say this isn't a public service Olympics. We all have different levels of capacity, and we want to make sure that students know, yes, get involved, serve your community, contribute to others, but that's going to look very, very different student to student. And this is not a competition. So again, it was just really important for us to set the stage going into this year that we would be reviewing applications a little bit differently. And then I'm going to hand it over to Andrew to talk a little bit about that with you.
Yeah, so, this year we streamlined things a little bit. We tend to make tweaks a little bit to these timelines every single year, but December 1 has always been a big date for us in terms of just getting applications in and getting them completed. It's usually where we say that's our priority deadline, meaning that a student gets the best opportunity for admission for scholarship opportunity and for any selective programs that we have, like our honors program. We'll certainly be getting to those. But, overall, the trend across higher ed has been moving these back to November 1, and sometimes even in October in some cases. We've always been trying to do the best we possibly can for students. And this was a year certainly not to try and push anybody to go a little bit faster than what they could. I mean, people were still getting their bearings with what we were doing with high schools, as late as November. So we made sure that gave everybody ample time, and we saw that in the trends in terms of application completion, and got a humongous push right before December 1, which took us well over where we were last year. So that was really incredible, and a job well done by everybody, but certainly for all those students to get everything in and get everything completed based with everything else they have going on. Regular decision, like always, is still there, and it's a situation where people still have an opportunity to apply. It's going to be a little tight this year, though, just because of how much we had in terms of an influx of applications and how competitive they were. I mean, these students, you would think you'd take a hit in terms of just taking test scores off the board. You'd have some students that would get a little bit better of a look with just a very high, nice GPA, but across the board, I mean, we're seeing kids sending in great test scores and just incredible applications. And, in a year where you would expect maybe if applications did go up, the quality would go down. That is simply just not the case. I mean, this is a high quality applicant pool where we even had some incredible early decision applicants. So for those of you who don't know the difference between these, most of it has to do with the deadlines. The difference, though, between those two early on, the early decision and the early action. Early decision is a binding application. So this is where you, not just you, the student, but the student, a parent, and a counselor have to sign a contract that says, I can apply elsewhere, but if I get in there, that's where I'm going. A lot of schools typically have that opportunity. It's not as popular as it once was. Especially here at Miami, but even at more selective schools, just because a lot of people have a ton of options out there these days. And it's always good to kind of see where all your opportunities lie. So it wasn't the biggest group as you would expect this year, where people didn't want to necessarily make that full commitment. But we still got some great applicants in that group too, who are just dedicated to Miami, want to be here, regardless of what their decision was going to be coming out. So that was all really exciting this year. So when you talk about what people have to send in as part of the application, Common Application is still our primary source, our primary and sole application. That is how you apply to Miami. Typically, it does come with a $50 application fee. A lot of schools were doing kind of widespread fee waivers. We didn't necessarily do that, but as always, we've always done what's in the best interest of the student and their contextual situation. We did give a lot more opportunities for students to have their fees waived this year, just given the circumstances. But certainly it wasn't anything widespread. It was just a situation where we wanted to make sure that students had an opportunity to get everything in and be considered on time. Letters of recommendation, which we'll talk about in terms of a little bit more detail later on. But we only require one. It's from a teacher or a counselor. In a lot of cases, what a counselor sends in is good enough for a recommendation anyway, where it can even be just basically a set of ratings that they put in for a student through the Common App. Transcripts, this was done a little bit differently this year as well. We wanted to put a lot of emphasis on a student being able to explain their academic situation. And so we instituted a self-reported system. So they could send us a transcript. We would take the weighted GPA off that transcript. As many of you know, not every high school weights the GPA, especially pretty selective private schools that have really hard curriculums. This was the first chance they had an opportunity to plug that in and have that weighted by us, and we could still utilize a weighted GPA even if their high school didn't do it. This was actually required for some of our more selective programs like nursing, like the Farmer School of Business. But it also gave a lot of power to the students to be able to kind of tell their own academic story. And it certainly helped us on the review end, which, looking through transcripts, you have 100 different ones in any given day from 100 different high schools. One academic record that they report is pretty much all the same. So that was nice. Test scores, again, this year, they were optional. If a student opted in, we would look at those in a simply a positive way only. They could only help a student. They would never hurt a student. We don't know necessarily what we're going to be doing going forward. It's all leaning towards test optional. Was very successful this year. So still looking at that, and good segue there. Bethany's going to take over on that decision for sure.
I know, right? It is highly, highly, highly likely that we will be test optional next year as well. There are other institutions that have already made this call, but we are going through the proper academic approvals and channels here at Miami before we make any official announcements. But it is not any easier right now for many of our future applicants to take the test or to take multiple tests. But yes, it was a great segue because there have been some questions about going test optional that I love to address. And that's the first one. Test optional does not mean less selective. As Andrew just walked us through, we moved forward with self-reported grades, particularly for our more competitive majors and programs, because we are now calculating up to 6 to 8 different GPAs based on different subjects that allow us to really get really granular with the student's academic performance, but now on a more level playing field with their peers. where the weights are the same based on the different level of courses that students take. So it allowed us to be as selective as we have typically been, but weighing a little bit more the performance in the classroom as well as the rigor of a student's curriculum, and still practicing that contextual review that we'll get to in a moment. It was also very important to us very early on to share with students and families that test optional is not going to be bait and switch at Miami. If we say we're test optional, that means that you can opt in for scores to be submitted for admission, for scholarships, and for every single one of our honors opportunities. It's on us to make sure that we are reviewing carefully and making the hard, sometimes selective decisions that we need to make in all of these areas without that one piece of information. And it's honestly not that difficult, because very often the test score is not the make or break thing with whether a student gets into any program or gets a certain scholarship. But that has been a big challenge for us, really just to explain to students and families that this does not mean it's going to be easier to get in necessarily. It just means that we're looking at things with a little bit more weight when it comes to a student's grades and their classes. We are telling students, please do not sit for the exam if it's not safe. If you don't even feel safe, don't sit for the exam, because again, this is not going to hurt you. It can only help you in the process. So again, I will let everyone know. I will shout it from the rooftops, if I'm honest, when we know for sure whether we are test optional for 2022 and potentially beyond. But those are all conversations that we are having right now. And I think on the next slide too. And that's something I alluded to on the last slide with holistic versus evaluative review. There are some institutions, particularly those that might have high volume of applications for the number of staff that they have, that practice what's called evaluative review. And for institutions that were test required going into this year, it was a challenge for those institutions to go from a formula that's spit out, admitted or not, based on a few numbers when they had missed one of their key numbers, the test scores. That is not something that Miami University practices. So we don't have a mysterious formula that a few numbers were plugged into to tell what a student's admission decision was. We practice holistic review. So that means that we read every page of every application and we take multiple factors into account when making a decision. And we find that this is pretty in line with most selective institutions, and that this actually set us up really, really well to go test optional this year. And I'll hand it back to you, Andrew.
Right. Yes. I mean, the holistic review is something that I've been just passionate about since I got at Miami, and they, this university has always put me in a position to be honest and forthright, and also have a voice on behalf of the students. So when it comes to even the self-reported grades, this was an opportunity, like I said, to put a little bit more power into their corner when it comes to explaining their academics. That's often a question we get. I had a question from a dad who had a lot of family members who attended Miami, and he's got his first kid applying this year, and they all go to a private school, and he simply asked that if this private school was going to hurt them in the chances of scholarship because they have such a stringent grading scale, he would consider taking his kids out of there. And I don't want to be anybody that's going to have to make that recommendation for him necessarily. I mean, it's an incredible school, and we always get great kids from there. So this is an opportunity for them to plug their grades in, be on a more level playing field with everybody, and also just do a little bit more of an explanation. We reweighted the GPA, I should really say. It wasn't necessarily recalculated. On a 4.0 scale for college prep, it moves up a half a point for honors and up a full point for AP, IBHL, and some dual enrollment courses as well. So we still give them that opportunity to really get rewarded for taking that rigorous coursework, which is always, in my mind, has been the biggest indicator of potential success at Miami anyway. The more a student is challenging themselves, and people always ask me that as well when they come to visit, is it more important to have a high GPA and a less rigorous coursework, or the other way around? I always say that the more a student challenges himself, the better their review is going to be at Miami for admission and for scholarship, and certainly for selective programs. And this gave them a chance to really highlight that. Every single course counts. We don't, take away from the creative arts classes or the entrepreneurship classes. I mean, those are the things we want them to take at Miami. So, we certainly wouldn't take that away from them in high school and building that interest. Our GPA is not exactly, like we said, the high school's GPA, but it is very close. It's a pretty standard scale, but we deal with a lot of different scales, 100-point scales. And sometimes you even get a school that won't give grades. They give, a contemporary look at the student, and that's just impossible to quantify. However, it's still kind of fun to read those applications every now and again. But again, we want them to take that rigorous coursework, which is usually weighted by most high schools. So we were certainly wanting to put that power back into those students who go to a high school that doesn't necessarily weight their GPA. When it comes to that curriculum, though, when we do look at it, we like to see the depth of courses within core academic areas. By that, we are talking about the foreign languages, talking about social sciences, the natural sciences, English, and math. And the more they are going in depth in those particular areas, the better it looks. In most cases in Ohio, you only have to take so many years of, say, math. However, we want them to dig deeper. A lot of schools don't even require foreign language, but we like to see it. It's part of that, global requirement that they're most likely going to face at Miami. So we want them to be prepared for that. When it comes to challenging themselves, though, and taking those higher level classes, look, this whole process in terms of evaluating a student's academics is literally just a way to try and find data points that would prove to us whether or not we think that kid will be successful in our classrooms. And honestly, one of the biggest telling factors has been their ability to take those high level courses, those collegiate level courses of IBHL, AP, or dual enrollment. Now, honors is certainly there for a lot of schools as well, but we certainly put an emphasis on the students that take those classes more often. They are better prepared for the types of curriculum that they're going to face at Miami. So that rigor is really important, but we obviously look at it in context of where they go to high school. I used to recruit in Southeast Ohio. They don't have a lot of AP options at a lot of those high schools in Southeast Ohio, but they do have a lot of opportunities to take CCP, post-secondary dual enrollment courses. So at local community colleges. And so that was typically the best option for a lot of, driven students at those high schools. We also look at trends, though, and this is a question we always get when it comes to the transcript. If I had a bad freshman year, if I had a bad sophomore year, if we have context as to why, it's very easy for us to see that. Now, there's always context to a rough freshman year. You are making a transition in your academics. You're going up a level. Now, a student that I see that struggles their first year, but then brings it back and learns their junior year how to succeed academically and starts taking rigorous coursework, well, they're honestly, almost every student, even a student who's gotten A's their whole life, they're going to face new academic challenges when they get to college. A student that has already faced those challenges and learned how to succeed can be really successful at the collegiate level. So we look at those trends, we look at those hiccups, we look at those peaks. And in some cases too, we look at dips as a way to say, they're trending downward and we don't know why. We're going to look for more context in other parts of the application. A lot of times that's what happens in the recommendation. You get to fill in those gaps. You get to hear about those trends. What might have happened? Was there a family situation during one of the years or a health situation that caused that? Another thing that the recommendation typically gives us a lot of great insight on too is the involvement of the student, and something that they might not necessarily report as part of their extracurriculars. We talked about it earlier. Bethany said, especially this year, you've seen a lot of students that had to be homeschool teachers for their younger siblings. I mean, that is incredible responsibility. It shows you're doing an incredible balance between what you're doing inside of the classroom and what you have to face out of it. So all of that tells a story, and that's certainly where we get a lot of the context within the recommendation. When people always ask, well, how many recommendations should I send in? Look, we don't have a limit. A lot of schools have a limit. We don't have a limit. However, if it's not telling a different story, there's really no use for it. So I always say we require one from a counselor or a teacher. Those can have two very different stories, so that's totally fine. If you're going to add a third one, do it from somebody that has a completely different story, a coach, a pastor, an employer. Those are great stories that tell all about your drive and your compassion outside of the classroom. So that always really helps. Parents, we love you, especially if you're alums. We love you. We'll talk about that here more in depth here later. But if you don't send in a good recommendation for your kid, something else is going on. So please don't send in a letter of recommendation for your kid. We know you love them. We love them too. We'll figure out a way to see how well they're going to fit into Miami. So when it comes to the essay, this is honestly my favorite part. I've always been kind of a writing guy, an English guy. So I love to be able to read the essay. This is our chance to really get deep with the applicant and see what is there beyond the numbers. And this is their opportunity to tell us that story. I have so many great memories of incredible essays, maybe not so good essays. And I always love explaining this to students. The number one goal that I always try and tell them to do is be authentic. Don't try and make up some crazy story, or don't try to elaborate on some story or get overly creative when it's not necessary. As long as the student is telling us their story of who they are and what they would bring to the university, we as readers of these applications can feel that coming through when it comes to authenticity. One of the best essays I've ever read was actually kind of in line with what Bethany was talking about earlier in terms of helping a family. She talked about how her parents called her the first waffle. Now, some people have called it the first pancake. She was the oldest of 5 siblings, and the whole essay was talking about how she never really understood when she was young what that meant. When she got into high school, she started to understand and really dislike that nickname. And she felt like it was just kind of this weight she had to bear for being this test subject of her family. But by the time she got to her senior year, she really took on a pride with it and knew she had to be an example for her younger siblings. And you could see the maturity. It was incredible. It wasn't this, heartfelt, rough story. It was just authentic. It was a great story that really you could see her maturity through this little story. So it was incredibly creative. It was not like anything else I've ever read, but it wasn't they were writing a song or they were writing a sonnet or they had to do something completely outside of the box. It was just authentic, but at the same time creative, and gave me a lot of great insight into this student. People always ask too, like, are you sticklers for grammar? It depends on who's reading it. I'll be perfectly honest. We all know those grammar police out there. I'm willing to pass on a few things, but certainly you got to make sure that you're writing it pretty well and allow some other people to get some eyes on it. I know not everybody's senior English class provides the opportunity that mine did, but that was literally the first assignment we had in senior English was to write a college essay, and it went through several layers of editing. And I can't stress enough how that's important. And I literally, every student that I meet on the road in the fall, if they ask me, I will absolutely read their essay before they submit it. I will read it. I will give them absolute 100% feedback from a grammatical standpoint, from a theme standpoint, and from a creativity standpoint. And, we are here to help these students. And certainly I want to help them with every bit of the essay or the application. And this is certainly one where you wouldn't necessarily think it can make a lot of headway with this process, but it absolutely can. I have been through the process with many different students that I've advocated for personally throughout my 8 years. And most of the time it came from something I read in the essay.
I think that's so true. I'm going to add something here because very cool new feature of the Common App is that students can now fill out the application completely from their mobile phone or device. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very cool. But it is also super clear when a student has not read through one more time, had someone take a look. So I could not emphasize that more, especially now that it's going to be even easier to complete and submit a common application in a mobile way. It doesn't mean that students get a free pass on grammatical and spelling errors. I'm one of those police officers. I have to admit it, Andrew.
It's there. One more point. I forgot about this about the essay, and it kind of goes on the line of being creative. I have one rule.
Ooh.
Is please don't let your child write about an ACL tear. I know that is bad, and I know it's a traumatic situation, but I read in a given day, let's say 50 applications. I guarantee you 30 of them are going to have to do with a sports injury. Most of the time it's an ACL. They just kind of fade into the background.
That might be true. So I'm going to add on to that a little bit. There have been a few sports injury essays that I have loved, but there was a common theme. Many of us have gone through trials in our lives, whether that be an injury, the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a dream early on that you wish you wouldn't have to go through before turning 18. It's the student who doesn't write an essay as if it's a crutch to explain things they have not overcome. It's the student who says, here's how I responded. Here's how I learned something, and I turned it into a positive, and I am better for that challenge. So I do let some of those ACL tear essays pass if they pass that test of showing me that this is a student who has overcome and learned, and they don't blame life. They don't point fingers. They take it on themselves. But it's so true. I could actually talk about the essay for another half hour. I don't know about you. I'll let you talk about the activities list now.
I mean, I like the activities list too. And I often get this question, what's better? Is there more involvement or deeper involvement in one or, a couple of different things? But this is certainly where we can feel some of that authenticity too. You can get a sense even where they are listing the hours and what they've been involved in, if they truly are passionate about it, or if it's just something that they've done just to add to their resume. You can feel it and you can sense it, but literally anything is fair game when it comes to the activities list. This is a common misconception. Students only want to put in things that they feel like have to do with their high school involvement. And that's not exactly true. Students often leave off a job. A job is a big responsibility. It has to do with a lot of time commitment. They often leave off church involvement, where they're doing great things, philanthropy, or teaching children on the weekends, or doing there's so many different things I think that students could add in that could give us a little bit more depth, a little bit more insight into their life and what they're doing outside of the classroom. And that's truly what this is all about. Miami is a place with 600 different student organizations. It's all about that collegiate experience inside and outside of the classroom. These are the type of kids that are heavily involved outside of the classroom that just are a super success at Miami, regardless of what their numbers say, because they just get involved in the entire experience. And, that just drives them. They find the support that they're looking for. And they always tend to do great things at Miami and have, an experience that they'll always remember and always talk fondly about.
And this is where we get to the more complex part of admission review, where you may have heard this before, and I'll still say it again. There are often times where we find ourselves in a situation where we're telling a student or a parent, it's not you, it's us. And that has to do with institutional priorities. There are goals that we have, not only to enroll a certain size class, but we are shaping a class to enroll in different programs, majors from different areas of the country and the world. And we think diversity is really important, and not just diversity in race or ethnicity, but in where people come from, in the backgrounds that they have, the talents that they bring. And all of these things go into shaping a class of a certain size, of a certain makeup. And very oftentimes we find ourselves having to tell very good, very qualified applicants who would otherwise do great at Miami that we do not have space. So this, again, it won't be any different this year. We'll be telling some students who are perfectly admissible, they're ready for college, that they do not necessarily get in. That usually comes down to some of the bullet points you see right here. And that's, did we just finish a new building? Did we create a new program that we need to grow? Which programs are completely maxed at capacity? And are there less popular majors that we really need to fill? We're going to be a little less selective with those programs. And then where are we looking for more diversity and we might not have as many applications? So we'll be less selective with that group, or more selective if we've seen an increase. And then, of course, what are the constraints and opportunities given COVID and international enrollment impact? Of course, it's played a role. As we have seen in international enrollments decline, particularly students from China, over the past 3 years, we have enrolled more students from out of state here in the country, as well as more students from Ohio. So we have found that we are a little less selective with our out-of-state and Ohio students as we need to make up that gap. But it goes right back to that top question or two, that it sometimes comes down to the major. It comes down to a talent or an offering that a student brings to the campus that we need to fill. I'll give one quick example. Andrew knows exactly what's about to come out of my mouth. We have 80 nursing spots a year. We have grown applications by hundreds and hundreds. We are up almost 25% in applications this year, but we do not have a single additional spot. So the admit rate for our nursing program is going to be between 20 to 25% this year. That is a far cry more selective than what you'll see for some of the newer programs that we want to grow. That's not all new programs. I will tell you, our game design program, so excited about it. But even in our first year, we had to be selective with game design because it's such a popular major here on campus. So again, we do tell students and families often, and it is the truth, that there are plenty of times when it's a great applicant, a great application, and we just have too many applications for the spots that we have in that particular major or program. All right, so I talked a little bit about holistic review, and just to give you a picture of how comprehensive it is, this is a small, not complete list, it's close, of the kind of review that we conduct here at Miami. And that's looking at class rank if we have it, the leadership and involvement of a student. We're looking at any extenuating circumstances because again, we have the privilege and the responsibility of taking each student's individual circumstances into account, and that's important. We do look at employment while in high school. We think that teaches so much about responsibility and dependability in high school that prepares one for college. We do think it's important to enroll students from all different kinds of backgrounds as well. So you'll see that we have priorities in enrolling first-generation students, students from underrepresented race or ethnicities. We do look at legacy status. I will say for the past few years, that has not played a role in the admission decision. I have had some uncomfortable phone calls with parents who think it should, but it is selective right now. And it has been for the past several years at Miami. I know that you all are no strangers to that conversation, and we do our best to make sure that it is an equitable process. We also have students who are going to come here and play a sport or an instrument, or they are an incredible artist. We look at all of the talents that our students bring to the table, and we work very closely with our campus partners who have been recruiting specific students to make sure that we're considering that process and relationship as a part of admission review as well. We also, that was not on purpose. Demonstrated interest is also something we get a lot of questions about. And that is not considered at this time for admission to Miami University, which is a gift, because I'll tell you, I don't even know how many emails we get in our inboxes, Andrew, toward the beginning of the year where it's a student just talking.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I want you to know I'm interested, and so I'm going to email you. Well,
Yep.
Meanwhile, that's not really demonstrated interest. Demonstrated interest is I can go on, and this is going to sound creepy, but I can see how many times a student has been on our website, what they're checking out, for how long they're checking it out. I can see how many times they've visited campus, what they've contributed in, have they talked with a professor. You can see the students who are really interested in our institution, and they don't have to send us an email to tell us, to just show their interest. So for your student that you might be saying, you need to email all 10 of these institutions, you need to demonstrate your interest. That's actually probably not what we're tracking. We have all kinds of things in the background where we are watching a student's behavior when they are on our website and shopping around, for lack of a better term, for what Miami University might have to offer them. And we're taking those things quietly into account. Right now, it does not play a role in the likelihood of a student's admission to Miami University. That may change next year or the year after that. I think, again, the less we have an opportunity to look at things like test scores, we're going to be looking at all of the options that we have to weigh whether or not a student really wants to be here and would be a good fit here. But at this time, that's not something we consider. And even if we do not need an email not really telling us anything at the beginning of a senior year. All right. So, Andrew, if you could just walk us through one more time a little bit about how our deadlines play into when we notify students of decisions.
Yeah. And that honestly is typically a big thing. And it depends on what kind of mood I'm in when I'm going over this slide. But a lot of times I will say the word deadline has the word dead in it for a reason. They're not due dates, they're deadlines. The common misconception is that when I press submit on the Common App, that's it. And you got what I'm submitting, and that's the only chance I have in terms of review. That's not the case. With us, a lot of cases, a lot of what you submit for your college application, even not at Miami, elsewhere, is out of your hands. You know, sometimes if you're going to submit test scores, they have to come from the testing agency. The counselor has to send in a lot on your behalf. So pressing submit is more or less opening up a line of communication between us and the student, and provides them an opportunity to see what we have, what we might be missing, and they can do so well before these deadlines. So, the Common Application opens up on August 1st in any given year. And so when it comes down to when they submit and when they come in, another common misconception is, well, I submitted it, in September, I should hear something by now. That's not how we do it, because we give them a lot of opportunities to update it, make sure we have everything in, make sure they have the right major selection. So we will wait, obviously, until we have those completed applications, and a lot of them, and review in bulk based off of when these decision releases come out. So we always usually do it by a date. The reason why it says by January 15th is because we typically will do, a surprise release to a lot of students that are kind of very high caliber students that we've gotten the ability to review early on before the holidays. So that's why we say by January 15th, but typically they're always in bulk, on those dates. We're all going to do that for a lot of the regular decision folks, or for early decision or early action folks who didn't get everything in on time. February 15th, we're planning on doing a review, a release of some decisions, and then of course March 15th for those regular decisions. So a lot of schools will do this by bulk, but then there's a lot of schools also that just do them on a rolling basis. Your application comes in, they review it, they send you a decision. Based off of the amount of time that we want to take with each application and truly do that contextual, comprehensive review, we need time with these applications. We need to make sure that the student has an opportunity to put their best foot forward before we review, but even after that, give them an opportunity to make adjustments if they need to. So that's what happens in terms of the deadlines and the decision notifications. And then obviously I explained earlier with early decision, the confirmation deadlines. For a lot of schools out there these days, They're doing more and more to try and enhance a student to put their confirmation deposit down earlier. A lot of times that's tied to housing. I always tell students, because of just the integrity of Miami, we don't do that. We have a different system of getting housing out to first-year students, and it has nothing to do with when they send in their application deposit. We don't want to give somebody, a leg up just for being quicker. We want people to make the best decision for themselves with this, and so they can wait until May 1st if they're non-binding, the national confirmation deadline, to make that decision. And families typically appreciate that, and I appreciate it being on this side, not having to force a student into making that decision too early.
I'm so glad you talked about that, and also about why we make decisions all at once and on a date as often as possible each year. And I want you to know, we really review students not just in the context of their high school, but in the context of this year's applicant pool. Each year, it's slightly different. And this year, we have over 2,000 more applications than the year prior. This year, we're 11% up in applications from Ohio and from out of state here in the country. So we're looking at what that major is. We're looking at where they fall within the context of their peers. And it's going to be a different review process every year. If we sent out decisions on a rolling basis, it would be just a first come, first serve. Not really looking at everybody in the context of all the students who want to be here, who did everything that we technically asked them to do. So it's really important to us to look at everyone who met our deadlines and is under each decision release type, to make as equitable of a decision as possible. And it is not easy in years when we grow applications. It's a good problem to have, but it is definitely,
especially when they collide with those institutional priorities too.
I know. So again, I'm just going to update y'all with our 19 to 2021 averages, and then give you an update on 2021, even though it's not completely up to date yet. So in 2019, we enrolled a class of over 4,300 students. This is pre-pandemic numbers, Andrew. And those students had an average GPA of a 3.78, an average ACT of 28, and they had a very, very high curriculum rigor, right? So in 2020, smaller class size, pandemic hit, no, average GPA, 3.76. Average ACT of a 28, very high curriculum rigor yet again. So in 2021, we have over 2,000 more applications, but oh my gosh, we've gone test optional. What does that mean? Are we going to be less selective? Just right now, we are 7% up in admits. So we have admitted more students based on the volume of our pool and wanting to get decisions to students sooner. But we actually are slightly more selective this year at this time because of the increase. And our students have an average GPA of a 3.95 this year. They have slightly higher curriculum rigor than the past 2 years. And they have an average ACT of those who have submitted of a 28. 40% of our applicants have opted out of submitting test scores, but our admitted student profile is still incredibly high. 3 years in the running so far, we're still seeing students self-selecting into Miami. These are students who say, no, I want the full college experience. I want to enjoy my life both in and outside the classroom, but I work hard and I am good in the classroom. I take my academics seriously. Miami might be a good fit. And it's just amazing to me after being at Miami for only 2 years, and this is my third admission cycle, of just how well our applicant pool knows themselves and the profile of a Miami student. It makes it challenging, right? Because most of our applicants are a good fit in many ways for Miami University. And we have an incredibly qualified applicant pool. I know on this slide, I'm updating you I know that life, Andrew. But we update on admitted profile here, but our applicants, yet again this year, are our most academically accomplished, most diverse applicant pool in our 212-year history. And I don't know for how many years we have said that, thinking, well, maybe next year it'll dip down a bit, but no, just incredibly impressive applicants. And then, of course, even without the test score, we have been able to commit to guaranteed merit scholarships for students each year. Now, sometimes we extend that deadline, but to go back to what Andrew was referring to, this year, based on the quality of our pool, how many students have applied to Miami University, we really stuck to that priority deadline of December 1st, that students need to have submitted their information, their application by December 1st in order to be considered for the merit scholarship guarantee. We don't penalize a student for being early action versus regular decision versus early decision for scholarships. We really hold them to that deadline of December 1, regardless of what they've selected. But regular decision will be our most selective round for admission overall to the university. So I think that's where the rub is when students choose regular decision. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our honors programs, and that's that we have 3 of them, and 2 are very new. Presidential Fellows Program, we're going into our 3rd year of offering that opportunity. Up to 15 students can enroll each year, and they get a full ride. This is tuition, room, board, and a $5,000 stipend to spend on research, study abroad, and other extracurricular things that the student might pursue over the next 4 years. It is highly selective, as you can imagine. And each year we do a showcase where students come and go through a 3-part interview, a class, a group interview, and then an individual interview with a panel before we select our presidential fellows each year. And those students are from all over the country and the world. So we have 90 finalists this year for the Presidential Fellows Program. 5 of them are from outside the US. And then it's about half and half with Ohio and the rest of the country. We even have a finalist from Alaska, which I can say because they found out a couple of days ago. But we're really excited by the reach that we see this program having across the country as we compete with other highly selective institutions like Miami that have full scholarship programs similar to the Presidential Fellows Program. The other new announcement that we're very excited about is the transition from our university honors program to be an honors college. It's now a residential experience, and we are thrilled to share this with students. I do think this is part of why our applicant pool continues to be so strong. Students have wonderful honors and high academic opportunities, whether it's research, or working closely with faculty on other projects in the community even. And that's what we see a lot of our students who want to be in the honors college doing as a part of our honors program. So we're very excited to see that component of the residential experience. But students can also expect a little bit more teeth in the honors college than the honors program. There will be a thesis or capstone requirement for all of our students, as well as the other honors requirements that some of our honors alum may be familiar with. Lastly, we have the Prodessa Scholars Program, and that replaces what you might be familiar with. Excuse me. As the university, it's not happening, Andrew.
You want me to take over? There we go. So Prodessa Scholars is going to be, it's taking over for the University Academic Scholars Program, and where honors has a lot of breadth to it, Prodessa Scholars is going to be much more about depth. There's a certain amount of themes that these students can choose from that are academically and professionally focused. And it just provides a student who's a little bit more individually motivated, more focused on that one area, a deeper experience within that one particular area.
Thank you. And then lastly, we do have some special programs for Ohio. I'm going to try it, make it through. Sorry. We have the Ohio Governor's Scholarship. So one student from each of Ohio's 88 counties is chosen for a full tuition scholarship each year. We're really thrilled about that. And it also really just is an extension of our Miami Access Initiative, where it's important for us, for students to, from the state of Ohio, if there is high financial need, excuse me, for us to be able to support those students financially. So you'll see that there is a high percentage of students from Ohio who have family incomes of less than $30,000, and they're not paying a dime in tuition. So while I think a lot of people know Miami as not the cheapest institution in town, because we're worth it and it's a very high value, and let's talk mid-career salaries when compared to other institutions, but we also are about access, and there are some great programs for students who might not have the resources of their peers to be able to afford Miami. So I love talking about the Ohio Governor's Scholarship and the Miami Access Initiative, as well as the tuition promise that as an Ohio public institution, we commit to when a student comes in, their tuition remains the same for their full 4 years here at Miami. Now, visits and events. This is all Andrew Boehm's wheelhouse. So he's going to walk us through some of the opportunities that we have both in person and virtual.
Yeah, I was just on campus today, giving some information sessions and tours. We are back. We're very COVID safe, of course, keeping protocols to be as safe as possible, not just for our visitors, but for our staff and for our students, first and foremost. Last semester, we offered tours and tours only. People would come and they would check in outside via phone. We'd send the tour guides out there. This year, especially, or this semester, given the timeline of where we are in the mission cycle, it's really important for these students who haven't had a chance to visit any college possibly to get inside the doors, connect with the admission folks as well, understand what are the next steps. So the ability to offer these information sessions has really been great. We've done it now for a couple of weeks with self-guided tours. Today was the first day that we had students back on campus. So our tour guides were there. It's my favorite part of the job. I was loving seeing their, I'm sure, smiling faces behind masks. We were all wearing masks the whole time, so I couldn't tell, but they were excited to be back. They were excited to be touring. So we have a lot of visit options for anybody, any student. There are regular information sessions and visits every single day. There are accepted only information sessions and tours every single day. And then for the accepted student who may have seen one of our information sessions virtually and just wants a tour, we have that option as well, to try and provide as many visit opportunities as we possibly can for these students. There's also ways to connect with all these different colleges through virtual experiences. We have opportunities to do that with Farmer School of Business, with the College of Engineering and Computing, with the Honors College. So there's ways for them to get specific when it comes to the virtual experience. But when we really want to bring them onto campus and obviously feel that magic and see that incredible place, it also helps to be able to make that connection with them and talk to them. And not a lot of schools that are in our area are doing this right now, but we have incredible student staff, incredible tour guides, and some of the best professionals in the business in our admission office who truly make it safe and doable, all with the same customer service that we've always offered. So we've been really excited to be able to do that. All those options are at miamioh.edu/visit. If you run into any issues, look me up on the website and just shoot me an email. I'll help you find a visit. I do that with anybody, but especially with alums who are looking to come visit and are having trouble finding the right visit for them. So we work on a personal basis. So,
Andrew, would you mind talking a little bit about how it looks different? How many people are we hosting on a tour or an information session right now, just in numbers versus what we were seeing in the fall or the spring last year?
Yeah, great point. So, in any typical year of my 8 years of being here, we host 50,000 visitors through our doors. When that shut down March 13th, we were in a whole new world. We didn't know what we were going to do. But, obviously to be able to make sure everything was safe and staying under the limits of, group sizes that was recommended by the governor, we were still able to feel like we could provide a visit experience for as many people as we possibly could. So right now, our information session is just to create enough space as possible in our information session auditorium, which has about 230 seats. We're limiting the capacity for each of those events at 10 students and 1 guest per. So 20 people within there. Then we also offer, though, a lot more space on those tours only. And then, of course, we have just the regular information sessions and tours that anybody can sign up for, too, at that same capacity. So overall, last fall, I think we were able to host, it was a tour every hour for about 7 hours. And the capacity limit of that was somewhere in the teens. So we're still seeing, even though we've limited the amount of people that can come in any certain visit, when we have less technical visits than we do, we're still seeing overall more people that have the availability to tour, more students. And so that's pretty exciting. If you're coming with mom and dad, it's best to just have one wait out by Starbucks or something, wait in the car, listen to a podcast, and then join us for the tour. We absolutely have enough room on the tour. It's just we want to keep everybody as safe as possible inside that presentation room. So Bridges was virtual this past year. If you're not familiar with what Bridges is, it was a visit opportunity that we've done for several years now that focuses on an opportunity for students from underrepresented backgrounds, but also students who just have an appreciation for and a commitment to building diversity on our campus. An overnight visit opportunity. It's the only one we do that's overnight, and it's a lot of logistics that go into that aspect of it. But it's important to get a lot of those students a night on campus, an opportunity to be with students who have been through this program before, who can speak about not just the current diversity of the university, but where the diversity of the university is going and where the commitment is truly built. This is an opportunity, I think, for a lot more students than that think that it's an opportunity for them. When we really talk about it being for students who have a commitment to building diversity, we want leaders in that aspect. We don't just want numbers. We want people who are going to come and create a more inclusive environment for everybody. And that's what this program is about. And it has done its job. We have brought in some amazing students through this, not just by giving them an opportunity to dig deeper in Miami, but then we reward them with a scholarship as well. It was done virtually this past year. Still tons of success, lots of great students, lots of great applicants, and they were very engaged in the experience. Hopefully we'll be able to do that back on campus in the fall. We'll still have to see how that goes. But look, if you want to stay in touch with us, there's a variety of different ways. Just going on, to the counselor page, if you are a school counselor, a lot of great information on there. But if you're looking to just connect with any one of us, if you go onto the admission webpage, there is a meet the staff opportunity. You can see who represents your student from what area of the country, or you can just pick around and find us and shoot us an email. We're happy to stay in touch with certainly alums, but anybody who's trying to make this process a little bit easier. So we try and offer up a lot of different ways to communicate with us on a daily basis, and we hear a lot of great feedback about that as well.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate your time. If you stuck with us for the full hour, thank you so much. We love sharing about not only our profession, but just how that applies at Miami University. It is such a privilege to work here. We have fantastic applicants and students who go on to do great things. It's pretty wonderful to watch the growth and also the enthusiasm of our alumni as you come to our Red Brick Road shows and serve on panels or write notes or help us recruit and talk up the Miami family in the ways that you do. And I just want to say thank you. It absolutely makes a difference. I probably don't have to say this to y'all, but it does. There's just something about the Miami family, and students are attracted to that. The right students for Miami are attracted to the spirit of love and honor. And we've had a great year so far, I will say. Where's wood to knock on that? In this year, yes, we're coming out of a pandemic, but we are up in applications from very qualified students from all over the state, the country, and the globe. We're admitting wonderful students yet again in this year. and making the tough decisions that, of course, go in line with working at a selective institution that I am sure y'all are proud to have graduated from, and I sure am proud to work at. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll take any questions if you have them.
Yeah, we did get a lot of questions, but honestly, you both covered most of the questions that came in. We do have we have about 4 that were pretty application specific questions. So I can talk with you guys later, and we can, for those of you that did ask application specific questions, I'll get with Andrew and Bethany, and then I can reply to you with their response, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Other than that, you guys covered almost everything. So in respect for your time and for those that tuned in tonight, we'll just go ahead and answer those specific questions later. But thank you both for your time tonight. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure you all learned a lot as well. So I appreciate you all informing us about the admissions process.
Thanks so much, Emily.
Thank you.
And just really quick before we sign off, be sure to check out our other webinars that we have coming up. You can do that at alumlc.org/MiamiOH and at miamialum.org. We have other events that are not on our webinar platform, so be sure to check those out. Other than that, thank you again for your time tonight, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.